People out there in YouTube land, it's been a long time. It's been a long time since we rock and rolled with some DS9, and I'm happy to be back. How are you, Peter?
Not bad, not bad. I guess I've missed doing this as well, but the break has allowed me to get a little bit of a leg up on the series because I was basically like whatever episode like we did at the end of the most recent podcast is probably the one I just watched. So now I'm like midway through season 4, so I got a little breathing room.
Cool. Yeah, I'm at season 4. I had to take a break from watching DS9 because I was just getting way too. I said I'm gonna get way too far ahead, and then I'm gonna forget everything. I forget stuff like the minute I stop watching it. I definitely can't be on season 5 doing a season 3 podcast, or I will be totally lost. So, guys, we'll do our best, or I'll do my best to remember all these episodes. Tonight, we're gonna be looking at a batch of kind of weird episodes because there's some hard hitting stuff and then there's some really silly stuff. It's like it just kind of goes back and forth. Um, but we got civil defense, we got Meridian, we have Defiant, so there's a Defiant again, and we have Fascination. We'll do past tense 1 and 2 kind of as a one off, and then life support. So we're going to begin with civil defense, which is an episode that aired in November 7th of 1994, written by Mike Crone and directed by Reza Badi. I don't know how to pronounce that name, Badi. And I see the auto destruct program has begun. Well. You are in trouble. That's Ducat talking about this
Hmm.
really kind of crazy episode where a computer program activates a station-wide lockdown, and it just becomes one of those episodes where every solution that they find ends up locking, them out of something else, which opens
Hmm.
up another problem until it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You think, how are they going to get out of this? What do you
Hmm.
think of this space? Not
Um,
this is a spatial anomaly episode. This is a what do you call these? Like almost like a techno anomaly episode.
Now, man, this is like the Star Trek version of Saw, really. Um, yeah, because like everything just becomes a trap. And what I liked about it is that I think O'Brien is pretty much the chief problem solver because he's the engineer, um, and he's trying to think of ways to get themselves out of this situation. But he's trying to like outwit Cardassians who are devious fucks, and they've prepared for every contingency. So literally everything he does just makes things worse. Like it starts off simply enough. Like he basically finds an old program that was meant to prevent a Bajoran uprising. It's like a security program that just locks the station down, right? Which is not the end of the world. But then he's in there with Cisco and Jake, and they try and escape, and this makes the program think, okay, like the hostiles are on the move. It's just this like secret program written into the station, and they prepared for every contingency. So anything they do to make it worse, like they try something really clever. They're like, okay, we'll surrender because you have like Ducat or of them playing saying, surrender now. We have no wish for loss of life. So they're like, okay, we surrender. But they're locked in. They can't let the imaginary Cardassians in. So the security level goes higher and higher to the point where it escalates to like self-destruct scenarios. And you think like, okay, like this would be a good time to get Ducat on the phone and tell him you got a bit of a problem. But
Yes.
he actually shows up to gloat. He hears a security code being requested. He shows up to gloat, but the program misreads it as he's a conspirator or he's abandoning the station or something. I don't know, but there's like a contingency program in there for him, and he realizes, oh my god, I'm as fucked as everyone else. So
Hmm.
it's just like Saw, where like you have these traps to try and escape, but the more effort you make to escape, the worse you make things.
Yeah, like
So it was kind of insidious.
it unlocks like one. You get out of one trap, which unlocks another trap, and another trap, another trap.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of this. For me, because again, it goes into that whole thing that we're talking about a lot during this podcast, guys. And I'm sure Pete is probably feeling this now as he's getting into season 4. When DS9 hits on all cylinders, it's such a unique show, and it's so different in all the politics and the religion and this, that, and the third, and the shady, the shades of gray. And then when you have an episode like this, it's like, man, especially if you're a Star Trek fan, like you've seen this. Not even Star Trek. I mean, this is like an episode of MacGyver. If you've seen any television in the last 40 years or whatever, you've seen this. Where the hero has 5 seconds to save the day with some weird techno babble solution of, I think he says he's gonna reroute the something though, not the warp core, because that's the go-to for the Enterprise. He rewires the reactor core so it won't destroy the station. And
No, he rewires the shields so that the self destruct mechanism goes off, but it gets absorbed by the shields.
oh, well, here it said the reactor core, but that's probably connected to the shields. But anyway, it's just techno babble for me. Like whatever it
Right.
was, it could be the shields, could be the toilets, whatever. It just doesn't interest me. Like it's not a bad episode, and none of. I mean, I think we've reviewed a couple where we're like, okay, this is a bad episode, but for the most part, DS9 is probably one of the most solid first 3 seasons of any Trek series, as far as just getting the story out there, boom, 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 and you get to the end, you're not totally bored with it, but at least I can't help but not judge an episode like this based on even some of the ones that we're gonna review tonight, where it's like, whoa, where did that come from? Like they're hitting heavy, and then we get a silly episode like this where you're like, whatever, and you kind of waste Ducat because there's this whole little subplot going with like Ducat and Garrick, when they meet each other
Mm.
and what's up with that. And even they could have extended a little bit more with Ducat in the whole thing about bargaining to get the station back, but that ended real quick because he got caught in his own trap. Odo and Quark, that's
That
senseless. I
was
mean,
actually pretty good, actually.
yeah, it was okay. It was a little comic relief, but it doesn't. It just seems like it's overstuffing on a plot that could have been a little tighter. Like I think I even like that episode where they found that mini universe. It kind of has a
Right.
similar thing about like we're running out of time. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? But it's been a while since we reviewed it. But I don't remember there being so many extra plots going on. It was just kind of we need to focus on this and just boom, get this story out. I think this episode would have worked a little bit better if it didn't have so many superfluous stuff going on and adding these elements like Ducat coming on. I mean, one of the greatest characters in DS9 in Trek history, and he kind of nothing. It's inconsequential his visit, and he just leaves the station afterwards. It's like, man, I'd be pissed if I were Cisco. I'd have like a little added scene at the end. Speaking of which, Ducat had a lot of time on his fucking hand to be making those damn videos, man. That's one
Yeah.
thing I kept saying. Is like, man, Ducat spent a lot of time making his little videos about what happens next. Like, he gets a lot of joy out of this shit. Um, and a red shirt gets killed. That's always notable after a phaser shot. But anyway, not my favorite of the bunch. Not as bad as the next episode. Oh my god!
Mm.
But
Yeah.
but we'll get there. Actually, we can go there now, unless you got something else to add.
No,
First,
no, that's good.
no, let's move along because we got a lot of episodes to look at tonight. So next episode, guys, is Meridian, which
Hmm.
is directed by Jonathan Frakes, who then shows up in the next episode. So he's like, hey, as long as I'm around the studio here, around the set, might as well direct an episode. And it's a teleplay by Mark Garrett O'Connell, story by Hilary Bader and Evan Carlos Summers, premiered on November 14th, 1994. Here's a little quote from Quark to his customer. Sorry to hear you say that. But if you're asking for a refund, forget it. The contract specifically says that satisfaction is not guaranteed. Anyway,
Yes.
guys, this is one of my note here that I put as my last little note. Oh God, this episode sucks. The most
Mhm.
drawn out love story. But basically, the crew end up on this planet that shifts in and out, or phases. I shouldn't say shift. It phases in and out of existence every
Mhm.
however many years, what 30 years or so. Um, so yeah, it spends most of its time in another phase of existence where its people only exist as consciousness.
Mhm.
So the crew are there to help stabilize the planet so it's not going to disappear forever again. That already took me out of the episodes because I'm like, dude, we're in the middle of a really important conflict and negotiations should be had with the who are the Jem'Hadar, who are the damn Dominion, and instead, we're gonna have like a Star Trek, like trekking out to a fucking planet episode to try to fix something. It's like, okay, whatever. But in all of this, it gets worse because then it turns into a love story. Jadzia, who's like the most hard ass, well, maybe Kira's a little bit more hard ass than her, but pretty hard ass, and she starts to fall in love with this dude in like 10 minutes of this episode, okay?
Mhm.
It's to the point where Dax decides that she wants to stay on Meridian. Um, so she finds a way to alter her molecular structure so she can slip into the other dimension. She gives this teary goodbye to Cisco. Uh, but, of course, it didn't work. You gotta have Dax. So you gotta have Dax on the show at least until season 6, okay? Um, and when she tries to phase, she gets stuck between the dimensions. The entire planet is there, and they realize, man, you can't do it, Dax. Your body is just not used to phasing into a different dimension. So they quit. She goes back into the Defiant. The planet phases out, and I was like, what the hell did I just watch?
Yeah, it's not just her physiology either. She's like actually anchoring the planet to that
Yeah,
dimension.
she's anchoring the whole
So
planet.
she's not just gonna kill herself; she's gonna kill everyone on the planet.
Yes. The only kind of cool thing about this episode is the whole
The
Quark
subplot,
scientist.
yeah,
Yes. Which, and that's one thing I love so much about DS9 because it asks those questions that us Trekkies ask. Like, what really goes on in these holodecks? These are hollow suites, which I guess is a way to differentiate it from the holodeck on the very family friendly Enterprise D. But I'm thinking even on the Enterprise D, those you got to get nasty, man. You got a whole fucking holodeck. Come on, Pete, where you can create all your beautiful Asian girls that you love. You can have Pete's
dude,
getaway in Thailand.
I just watched Arman Bashir tonight, and actually,
Yes.
we'll be talking about that in a few episodes. But that's an episode like that.
Yes, and I'm like, come on. What I like is there's a new Trek series called Lower Decks, which is a cartoon series, but it pokes fun at Star Trek. It's a comedy thing, so I really like it. And one of the episodes, like one of the jobs, the lower decks are, the folks that have very low ranking. So they're working in the lower decks of the ship. And one of the jobs is cleaning up after the holodeck.
Oh boy.
And they make some allusions to like some nasty stuff that they gotta clean up. Because Riker was having fun in that holodeck. He wasn't like Picard, trying to be part of a Shakespearean historical novel or something. Riker was in there getting it in.
Yeah.
So I like this, and I like that they brought up the whole ethics of it. Are you making a a character based on somebody else? What are the ethics of that and stuff like that? So
Yeah.
that was kind of cool. I could have done a whole episode of that instead of Dax falls in love with Phase Out dude. Really,
Yeah.
girl. No way.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, this story was actually very familiar to me because I was in a high school production of Brigadoon, and
Oh,
this
cool.
this is Brigadoon, man. This is exactly Brigadoon. Brigadoon is like an old school musical. I think they made a movie of it
Oh
starring
yeah.
Gene Kelly, and it's about
Brigadoon.
this Scottish village that appears for like one day every 100 years. And the
Mm-hmm.
people there, like, they don't age. They exist in this other dimension for the other 100 years, and they like live forever. But once every 100 years, they materialize in our world, and this American traveler falls in love with this Scottish villager, and he's gonna marry her, but he loses her. This is totally the Star Trek Brigadoon, but yeah, you don't want Brigadoon and your Star Trek mixed up. I
Yes,
mean,
no, to the point where when you mentioned you were in a high school production of Brigadoon, I was too, and I didn't remember shit. I just knew I had to do that silly little Scottish dance over the swords. That's
yeah, I
all I
did
can
too.
remember.
Yeah, I wore a kilt and everything.
Yeah, that's all I can remember from that story. Like, if you had asked me, tell me this plot of Brigadoon like you just did, I would have been like, I don't remember because that shit was boring as fuck. I just remember that damn song, Brigadoon, something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you don't want Brigadoon in your, not in Deep Space Nine. Like, okay, maybe in TNG. I mean, in TNG, there's this whole story where Beverly Crusher finds like this diary of her ancestors, and it ends up that it's these ghosts, and they fuck the shit out of her. She's getting fucked by these ghosts the whole episode. So it's like, okay, we can deal with that on Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's wacky. It's kind of well, not that family oriented. It's family oriented in another way, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that works on TNG and it's perfect for it, but not on my DS9. By
Yeah,
the
and
way, go ahead.
yeah, I also found the love story really unconvincing. Like, you'd think someone like Dax, who's lived 7 lifetimes, wouldn't just fall for this dude who like says hello to her and has a nice smile in like 10 minutes. It was really unconvincing. Like, oh my god, like you're, and I don't even know how that would work with the Trill, like where everyone exists as consciousness. Like, wouldn't like she, like Jadzia and the symbiote, be like different consciousnesses? Like, I think there's a lot of things there that they just really overlooked about the character as a person, but also physiologically.
No, it doesnn't make much sense. This whole thing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this though. Jonathan Frakes directed this, and he's directed a lot of Star Trek episodes. And Jonathan
Mm-hmm.
Frakes, one of the great Trek directors, responsible for First Contact. But the other side of that coin, the flip side, is he's very sentimental. So
Mm-hmm.
Insurrection, which is the movie after First Contact, which has this whole Picard love story. It's all about these people and their feelings and da 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 da. I like Insurrection, but it's a very sentimental movie. So he's got this touch, when
Mm-hmm.
you watch Jonathan Frakes directed episodes, you're pretty much going to get one of those two things. Either it's going to be this awesome, like, battles and technical and da 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 da, or it's going to be like the very hearty Trek, straight from the heart.
Right.
And sometimes it works. I mean, I love me some hearty Trek. Did we review the episode where Cisco and his son go on that ship? I think we did that last week, or not last week, last.
No, we have not.
Oh, we haven't. Oh, I love that
That's a
episode.
season 4 episode, I think.
Okay, it's early season 4. I thought it was early season 3. And that's a super sentimental episode, but for me, it works. I think it's really beautiful. So I'm not against sentimentality, but like Pete said, it's got to fit the characters. Like, this just does not fit for me. Dax, she's not a fall heavily in love at first sight, unless it's a Klingon named Worf type of girl. You know, she's a
Right.
she's a rough ass. She's a tough ass. Now this episode is important though, Pete, for another reason. It's the first of many Star Trek appearances of a very famous Trek actor that everybody loves. That's in every Trek episode, it feels like. And it's Jeffrey Combs, the great Jeffrey Combs, who will uh, be a very important part of the Star Trek Deep Space Nine cast. Later, I guess later in season 4, I haven't gotten to him yet, but he plays Win. Um, um, is that his name? No, I'm getting Windu. I'm getting my Star Wars and Star Trek. Wait, who does Jeffrey Combs play? And I forgot the name. Jeffrey Combs, DS9. He's played like a million characters in GF. He plays Wei Yun. Wei Yun, not Windu. Mace Windu is Star Wars. Um, but yes, he's the go to. He also plays the when you have the episodes with the what is it, the Inquisitor that comes down, the Ferengi guy that's like the tax collector. That's
The
him too.
Negus.
Not the Negas, but the guy
Mhm.
who is the chief of like the central bank, who's
Okay.
always trying to screw Quark for something. There he is.
Right.
Look, every Star Trek character played by Jeffrey Combs ranked. He's played a bunch, but this guy here on the top right, or right here in the middle. So you see him a lot whenever um, uh, Quark is not paying his taxes or whatever. And I think this is from this episode
Right.
here. Yes. So Jeffrey Combs, one of the greats. The Trek family loves him because he's played everybody. Um, well, let's move ahead well to a better episode. Oh yeah, no, these are at least for me. Let me see if I'm not mistaken. It's the Defiant.
More
That's
Jonathan Frakes.
Yes, it's Thomas Riker, who, for those that don't know, Thomas Riker was created via what do you call it, a transporter anomaly, because those things happen in the Trek universe. And when William Riker got, transported, when he came back, he split into two. So Thomas Riker has he's identical to William Riker, including all his memories, everything up to the point of this transporter incident. So just so you know who the hell that is. Um, and I hadn't seen this episode in such a long time, Pete. It kind of, I knew Thomas Riker was kind of a shady character, but I forgot exactly how it is that they were going to play it. And I loved it.
Yeah.
He kept
Well,
me a
we
little.
don't know it's Thomas Riker at first. It starts off as like one of these weird crossover episodes where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, Riker's just like on vacation. He's taking some time on DS9, but we think it's William Riker, and all the ladies love him. He's charming. Um, but yeah, then they swerve you pretty good. And actually, I don't remember Thomas Riker from Next Generation because it's not like I've seen every single episode. So yeah, this totally caught me off guard. I
Oh,
didn't know
cool.
anything about this backstory.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I knew that there was a Thomas Riker episode. I just forgot exactly how the show came, like how that they presented that. No, this is not William Riker. And it was really great, great bait and switch.
Hmm.
From what seems like a comedy episode, like Pete was saying, with Kira needed a holiday and being overwhelmed and everything, to heavy duty politicking in the second half.
Hmm.
Um, so basically, yeah, you can go over this one.
Well, like I said, it was mostly news to me. It starts pretty light. Kira's overworked. Riker's there on vacation. Nothing much happens, and then there's this really weird scene between O'Brien and Riker. Like he asks Kira to see the Defiant, so like she takes him to show him the specs and all that. O'Brien's there doing some work, and he's like, "I have nothing to say to you." And O'Brien's a little weirded out, but he doesn't say anything. And I was like, what the fuck crawled up Riker's butt? Like, I must have missed
Mhm.
something here. But it turns out, like, his aim is to steal the Defiant. He has
Yeah,
thrown in with what are these rebels called
the
again?
Maquis, the
The
Maquis.
Maquis. Yeah, he's thrown in with the Maquis, and he's basically going to use the Defiant to declare a one-man war on the Cardassians,
I
which
know.
gives Cisco a real ethical debate because he's kind of got to risk like not only killing Kira but destroying the Defiant by tipping off the Cardassians, who he's not a big fan of. But as a diplomat, it's kind of his responsibility to put the safety of the galaxy and avoid all out war first, even before his first officer and his ship. So he does that, and this is actually where the best moments of this episode were for me. It was how Ducat finds out how out of the loop he is in Cardassian politics. Like
Yes.
Cisco is working with the Cardassians, and they're kind of finding out, okay, you guys have been spying on us, you know this shit about us, but we know this shit about you. And poor Ducat's like, what the fuck have I been missing? I don't know anything. Like, why don't people tell me shit around here? And you can tell he's pretty defensive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those moments with Cisco helping out the Cardassians were pretty good. Um, Riker's strategy, like Cisco trying to out chess maneuver him, because the Cardassians, they don't know that Riker knows what he knows, right? They got this secret military buildup, and that's what he's going to attack. But they don't know he knows that, and
He has
Cisco
the alliance
manages to
system.
figure it out. So yeah, there was a lot of politicking, double dealing. At the end of the day, I would say this was kind of a nothing episode, kind of anticlimactic, but yeah, the Cardassian stuff was pretty cool. The Riker stuff didn't do much for me just because it's like an area of Star Trek mythology that I really had no previous knowledge of and no real backstory. I got it all from this episode. But it was decent enough. Like I enjoyed it, but forgot about it pretty quickly.
By the way, I forgot to mention this episode is written by the great Ronald D. Moore, who, really starts writing more and more of these episodes and really joins the crew and one of the great sci-fi writers. So, forgot to mention that, and it premiered on November 21st, directed by Cliff Bowl. For me, everything he said works for me, but I don't see it as inconsequential for a couple of reasons. One, it's building up the Maquis storyline, and that storyline culminates in one of the greatest DS9 episodes where Cisco pretty much, you know, he poisons a whole planet,
Right.
to spoilers, in order to catch one man, who is a Starfleet officer. What's his name? Shit, and we just talked about him in the last episode. That not Erickson. Oh, guys, it's been a long time since I've been Edison, who comes in
Mm-hmm.
as a security guard, and then and that's, I mean, we're jumping ahead. I'm jumping ahead, I should say, but it's what makes this fucking series great because it's this one little thread. You had no clue Edison was involved with this, and then when they finally reveal it, it's like, oh shit, and you wonder, like, did these writers, were they thinking this far ahead, or did they just let the character take them where he ended up? And then, so we already had the Maquis part one and part two, so all this stuff is sprinkled in there that seems inconsequential, but it adds to the threat that the Maquis end up becoming. Because in the first Maquis episodes, Cisco is still on this level of, yeah, I sort of get it. Kira kind of gets into his head a little bit, where okay, they're a nuisance, but they're not start global, not global, interstellar war type nuisance, which is what they're about to start here, with the Cardassians and the Federation potentially. Another thread that's wonderful is what you were talking about with Ducat.
Yeah.
because we start to see this resentment build up and build up and build up to the point where Ducat eventually takes total control of Cardassia and how he manages to do it, and more stuff about the Obsidian Order and these secret spies and all that stuff, which really comes to a head season 4 and afterwards. Also, I was listening back because I was trying to figure out which episode we stopped on. So I was listening to our previous podcast before this one, and you had mentioned how, man, they made this big deal about bringing the Defiant out, and it's all busted up. And I told you that they fixed that ship up. It's not
Yeah.
at total capacity yet, but it's they definitely fixed that Defiant up, and it can take a beating and give a beating. Um, and then the last thing is Cisco and Ducat working together for me is classic stuff,
Yeah.
because they do so many great scenes after this episode where they you see that they're not on the same side, but they're on the same side. When they realize, hey, the Maquis is not really the threat. The threat is all this spying and all these secret orders and all this stuff going on that could cause a real big conflict between our two, planets or whatever, species, and we can't have that right now, because the Klingons. Oh, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but the Klingons get a little wacky for
Yeah.
the the Romulans you can never trust, and we got this fucking Dominion coming out the other side of this wormhole potentially. So we really can't afford, to have a war between us two, and it's not the Maquis that's responsible for this stuff. It's all these secret Cardassian spies who are building up warships, who are attacking them. So for me, classic. I like it. The only thing I don't like about this episode is the kiss at the end. Riker kissing Kira. That's about it. But
Right.
everything else works for me, including Tom Riker stealing the fire, which I thought was cool. Kind of throwback to Star Trek 3, which I rewatched like last month, where they steal the Enterprise. I love little sequences like that. So cool. I dig it. I dug this episode a lot. I think it does add up to a lot of stuff, but it's not clear. It's not like, plot A is going to lead to plot B. It's more, here's some real heavy, it's more than a sprinkle. It's like a light shower of stuff that you're going to, put your seatbelts on. Strap on those seatbelts because this shit's going to get wild in a minute. But anyway, let's move ahead to, and like I said, hard hitting to like silly shit. The
Hmm.
is fascination. This is the bipolar section of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, because
Yeah.
we're gonna go with fascination next, which is an episode that premiered. Oh man, Jammer here, by the way. I forgot to give him a shout out. I'm always using his site. He gave it 1 star. I don't blame him. This is from
Hmm.
November 28th, 1994. Teleplay by Philip Lezebnik. Story by Aristide.
Directed by Avery Brooks, if I
Oh
recall
my God.
correctly.
James Crocker wrote the story and directed by Avery Brooks, who has directed better episodes. So thankfully, this was not his one shot, and he misfired, and that was it. But yes, Avery Brooks directed it, and we have a line here from Jake. Marta was a mistake. She was too young, too immature for me. Major Kira as a woman. So basically, this is
He
like
calls her Nerys for most of the episode, though.
what'd you say?
He calls her Nerys for most of the episode, though.
Yes, Maurice. Now this is going back to classic TOS Star Trek trope of the virus or whatever. Something comes on the ship that changes people's personality. It's the naked. What's the name of the episode? The naked something. The naked now or whatever. But the naked time. That's it. With the famous Sulu with the with the fencing sword and everything, and everybody going wild on the original Enterprise. So yes, tired Star Trek trope, and they didn't really do anything new here for me. Um, you know, apparently what the issue is, we find out at the end. Spoilers, guys. Lux Pete. You can tell I haven't been doing podcasts for a while because my tongue is tied. Good lord, Luxwana, Luxwana. Let me open that mouth up and move those muscles. Luxwana Troy is back, um, and she apparently is going through like
Menopause, basically.
menopause. Yes, Betazoid menopause, and it starts to affect everybody on the ship. Okay.
Yeah.
And we get all these little threads. O'Brien waiting for Keiko to come back, which I thought was cute. That part was cute. The O'Brien and Keiko storyline, because it
Hmm.
ends up they really do love each other, you know. But the thing is,
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like what Oksana's doing is she's
hmm
projecting her empathy onto other people
yes,
unconsciously. So if they have a subconscious attraction to somebody, it just comes out, and it makes for these like weird pairs, like Jake, coming on to Kira like hardcore and shit like that. But O'Brien remains unaffected because it turns out Keiko is his only love. He doesn't have a
even though they're
subconscious
fighting,
attraction.
even though they're
Yeah.
fighting for most of the episode, but but yes, that is his only love. So that was cute. Although there was, some of the dialogue that they wrote for Keiko is the reason why folks don't like Keiko and consider her a nagging wife. But it might have been an effect of Laxwana.
Hmm.
And there's so much going on. We know Morn has a lot of issues, even though he doesn't
Yeah.
talk. Um, we know that Burrell is creepy as fuck. No, this dude is creepy as fuck, man. I can't get into him. I know you were like, oh, I knew people like that with the whole I only talk in monotone because I am a shaman, whatever.
Yeah.
He's freaky. I don't see what Kira sees in him, and I'm glad. Oh, so terrible to say, but I'm glad he dies. I think we're going to talk about his death tonight. So get rid of this guy. Odo enjoying music and dancing is kind of creepy. This whole episode is creepy. I'm just going down my notes as I was
Yeah.
watching.
Well, apparently it was based on a Midsummer Night's Dream,
Oh,
which
okay,
is,
there you
yeah, Shakespeare play about comedy about everyone just going freaky and wild and orgy weird, except it's got like, half
go.
man, half beast and shit in it. So this is a little more normal than the Shakespeare version, if anything.
No,
But
for sure. Yeah, not on the
it's
same level.
it's odd. It's odd.
Yes.
But it's like one of those things, like, and Space Nine does this a lot to a varying degree of effect. Like, they like to take the characters and put them in these uncomfortable, out of the box type of situations, and sometimes it like really clicks. Like the one I
Yeah.
was watching tonight with like Bashir being James Bond in a holosuite program, like that kind of worked. But this didn't. It's like, okay, like, who is the least likely person for Kira to have a subconscious like hot on for? And it's Bashir. And it's like, well, I appreciate what you're trying to do, like, because like we wouldn't expect that, but we wouldn't expect it because we know it's not true, so
And
it doesn't work. It's same with Jake having a crush on Kira. It's like, okay, wouldn't this be funny? It would be funny if we could believe it, but
yes.
we don't. So
Mhm.
it's just weird.
Yeah, it makes sense like Odo falling for Kira because we know Odo's got the hots for Kira. We've known it for a
Hmm.
while. Uh, but you know what's funny? I wrote down in my notes, Bashir and Kira kiss is so gross. But the ironic part of it is that in real life they got married. They have like 2 kids
Oh,
together.
really?
Yes, yes, no, they were married for a while. Actually, I think she gets pregnant with this kid in during the filming of DS9. Though, so during DS9, they were together for a very long time. Dax knocking Burrell down is the best part of all this because Burrell is creepy as fuck, man. He's like he's like grabbing by the pussy creepy. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, no, I would not want that kid around my young daughter if I had one. Miles, but in the end, Miles is the husband we all need, man, because he takes shit. And Keiko gets some dick at the end of this episode, and she tells him, "You still have the touch." So good for Miles, man. Miles is the everyman. You can't hate on Miles. I'm sorry. If you hate on Miles, you are kicked off this podcast. Uh, let's see what else I got here. Oh, I did say that Brooks, he loves his long one-shot pans, man. He just loves to just show all the stuff going. He does end up directing a better episode later on. I forgot which one it is, but I know I wrote it down in my notes going forward. But yeah, dumb episode. I didn't even give it a star rating. It's just, it's whatever. This is a forgettable one. Absolutely forgettable.
Mhm.
But now we get to one that's not so forgettable. This one usually ends up on most DS9 fans' top 10 or top 20, which is Past Tense Part 1 and 2. So we might as well just knock them both out together.
Mhm.
Although I like Part 1 a little bit better than Part 2. But it's a time travel episode because DS9 has not had one yet. So, um, Cisco's going to Earth to get some update about the Dominion. Oh, let me give us the specs here. Let's see who wrote this. Who did it? When did it premiere? It premiered on January 2nd, 1995. It's a teleplay by Robert Hewitt Wolf, which is one of the stars on the writing staff. And of course, Ira Stephen Bear, another star there, wrote the story along with Wolf. And it's directed by Reza Badi. Okay. Bashir, what does he say here? A quote from Bashir: 21st century history is not one of my strong points. Too depressing.
Mhm.
um, yes, so they're going back to Earth as they usually do, and um, there is some weird spatial anomaly, and it's a transport accident. In fact, sorry, and they are sent back to right now, 2020. No, we're in 2022. So they're sent back
Yeah.
to
Not
24.
far from now.
Yeah, not far from now. And this is a heavy-handed episode. I mean, it doesn't hide the fact that it's just preaching about, how people are being
Mhm.
treated. There's, society has turned into this, very rich and the poor who are only living in these sanctuary cities, and
Mhm.
um, the not being treated very well. And by the way, the transporter accident, it involves Cisco, Bashir, and Dax. Just that Dax, I forget
She
that she
gets
had,
separated. She gets
yeah, I forgot if
separated.
she hits her head or something, but she does get separated, and she gets taken by this dude who's like this big media mogul and everything. And
Yeah,
it's
she wins the fucking transporter malfunction lottery, man.
mm-hmm.
I'd be like, fuck those guys. I'm staying here with the billionaire, man.
Yes. Um, so 2020s, people without jobs or homes, they all end up in a sanctuary district, and there's a cop there. Who plays that cop? Because he was so good. You're good with all these actors. Um, I forgot, man, but he was one of the best parts of the episode, and I want to give him a shout out. Let me see, where's the cast here? Um, hmm, I'm not gonna find it right now, but I'll get his name a little bit later. I don't know. Is it Jim Metzler? Dick Miller?
Mm,
I don't know who it is. I'm sorry, guys. Forgot his name, but the older cop, great, great, great. He's like an Archie Bunker type character. In the end, he does have a little bit of a heart. So yeah, Dax is stuck with the rich dude, and Cisco and Bashir are stuck in the sanctuary district. And Bashir becomes the moral voice of this episode, where he's just pointing out all the stuff that's fucked up, but it's a way to say, hey guys, out here in real world 1994, you're kind of fucked up too. Um, and we get all these questions, how would the Federation react if something hard went down and humanity crumbled? Well, we sort of got the answer to that in Star Trek Discovery Season 3 with the burn. So the Federation still holds on to its principles and tries to build. Um,
Yeah, but
Cisco,
a lot of people leave too.
yes, but some leave too. Cisco and Bashir, they got to trade clothes. They did not win the lottery, as Peter said. They got stuck there in the district. But Dax gets all cleaned up pretty well. And then the crux of this episode is that they are there just a few days before the Bell riots. And the Bell,
Yes.
yeah, this guy Gabriel Bell is an important figure in history, in Star Trek, in the Star Trek history, who begins this riot that's televised. People see it and they start to see how terrible the conditions are for these people, and they decide, hey, we got to do something for these folks in the sanctuary district. This is not how we're supposed to be living. So
Right.
that is what happens there. And the episode ends on a cliffhanger because there's a bit of a fight out in the streets. And who gets killed? Gabriel Bell. So Cisco and
Hmm.
Bashir need to make a decision. And the decision is that Cisco says, I'm going to be Gabriel Bell. Why?
Yes.
Because he is the Cisco. And the
Yeah,
Cisco.
he's space Jesus, and now he's space Martin Luther King too.
Yes. Earth Martin Luther King for at the time.
Yeah.
Yes. Future Martin Luther King. So good for him. And for me, perfect. The second
Yeah.
part, we'll talk
Because
about
it
that.
does cause problems at the end of this episode. Back on Deep Space Nine, like the timeline starts getting like all of this evidence of the Federation starts disappearing,
Yeah,
and the crew on DS9 figures out, like they've already figured out that their three crew members are lost in time, but they don't know where they are. And then they see all this shit happening. It's like, oh fuck, they did something. So
exactly.
Cisco's decision to be Bell is basically just like, man, if this guy doesn't exist, like nothing that we have will either. So we just gotta fucking fake it.
Exactly, exactly. So it's out of necessity that they do it. Although that is that's such a time travel trope, where you travel back to the past and then you, the main character, become the catalyst for what is supposed to happen because of either somebody dies or you just didn't know that you were the one that was supposed to do whatever, whatever, whatever. But um, what do you think of this episode though?
You
This
know,
part one.
this whole two-parter, I really wasn't a big fan of. I felt it was too weighty. I grew up in the 90s. Well, actually, I grew up in the 80s, but I was a young adult in the 90s, and there were social problems, but it felt like we were moving forward on a lot of them. And I just felt that this whole two-part thing was a little unreasonably pessimistic. I was talking to a student of mine the other day about how every generation always seems to think previous generations were better. And the reality is, most of the time I look back, I think previous generations were actually worse, and we do consistently improve up until now. This is the first decade I actually feel like it's been worse than a previous decade. But for and I think maybe this is because Roddenberry wasn't involved in the show, but Roddenberry was always like he was pretty optimistic, and this I think it took a really pessimistic view of where the world was going from a past point of view, and it's like, oh no, we needed these guys from an enlightened future to come back and fix us and take us in the direction that the future would eventually become. That's
Mhm.
actually another Philip K. Dick joke too. Like, oh, it was all supposed to be. It's the circle of life kind of thing. So yeah, I felt this was too heavy-handed, too pessimistic.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you because I remember the first time I watched it, I really fell in love with it because there is this gap in well, it's not a gap, but there's a space there between. Apparently, there's like a World War III. There's what's the other thing that happens? There's the eugenics war, and these are things that are mentioned in Star Trek. You know, Khan is part of the eugenics war, where
Right.
you know where they had the superhumans in order to fight. And there's kind of like it's kind of a mix, you know. Like, did the eugenics war happen before World War III? What happened? But we do know that Earth was in dire straits. You know, like if you watch
Right.
First Contact, you see that, you know, that what made Earth go to the next level is the warp engine test and the meeting with the Vulcans, and that was in 2063, I believe. Let me see, I put that over here. Yeah, April 5th, 2063. So I didn't mind the tone of it necessarily, because that is supposed to be what Earth was like for a while, you know. And even in the new show, what was that? The Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the first episode. Pike gave this whole monologue about, our planet was on, you're on the brink of what our planet went through, which was this time of
Right.
destruction and this.
He does actually mention a world war in that, actually.
Yeah, no, in Trek lore, there's definitely a World War III. And it devastates the planet. It's just the timeline. So, because different writers, and canon and all this bullshit, it's kind of weird. The eugenics war happened first, because if you watch Star Trek Picard, they were there very close to this Bell Riot stuff. Like
Yes.
even
Yeah.
to the point where people were like, "Oh my God, are they going to show the Bell Riots? Is there going to be a Cisco cameo or something? Avery Brooks cameo?" So it seems like, it's kind of mixed of when all this stuff is happening. Let me see if I can find it real quick. When was World War III in Star Trek? According to Star Trek, from what we know of Trek canon, World War III is supposed to begin in 2026,
Oh,
which is
wow.
about 2 years after these Bell riots. And when was the eugenics war? Eugenics war in Star Trek? That was way before. That was supposed to be in 1992 and 1996. The eugenics war in the Star Trek timeline. Okay, so there's a big gap there. So yeah, that's why for me that part didn't throw me off, because in Star Trek lore we know that there's this very dark period in human history, and the hopeful part is that the Roddenberry vision part of it all is that, hey, humanity managed to get out of it, and one of the reasons is because of people like Bell, who woke folks up to the terrible things that were happening. By the way, I got the guy on the screen here. It's played by Dick Miller. He was Finn, the older.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a great character. Right? He's one of those that guy actors.
Exactly. I know I've seen him
Yeah.
in everything. He was in Dead
Yeah.
Heat and Get Crazy, All the Right Moves,
Yeah.
New York, New York. He's been in Terminator. He was in Terminator. He's just that guy that you're like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah.
So he was in V, The Final Battle, of course. I watched
Yeah.
it a couple years ago.
And
So
there is actually another really good guest star in this, and that is Deborah Van Valkenburg. She plays like their little female helper in the refugee center,
yes.
and she is probably best known for being like the only chick in the Warriors, which is like huge '70s cult movie that
Yes.
approaches gang culture from a Roman history point of view. It's pretty wild.
And somebody else shows up in this episode who's actually has a history with Star Trek. Most people don't know, which is Ron Howard's little brother.
Ah, okay.
He's in there. Remember when Dax follows the guy to the manhole because I think he took her communicator and everything. It's what is his name? Ron Howard's brother. He's I always forget his name. Clint Howard. Yes,
Ah,
Clint
okay.
Howard is in this episode, and he was in the original original Star Trek, he was this weird thing right here. Look at this. Maybe you'll remember this from your childhood. You've probably seen this episode of Star Trek, the original series, where they're out there dealing with this really weird space anomaly, and they can't
Right.
escape it. And in the end, it's just this little kid, but he's an alien.
Yeah.
Alien. He's like, ah, 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 ah.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah, yeah. This rings
yes. Da, da,
bells.
da, 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 da. There's and Ron Howard always likes to put his brother in like little cameos in his movies. So it's cool to see him in Star Trek again after all these years. But yeah, so getting to part two of this, I liked it. I mean, the story, it's a decent story, a decent conclusion, but it doesn't have as much intrigue as part one. That's why I kind of downgraded a little bit. It's mainly a hostage situation. It's, Dwayne
Yeah.
Barry, Star Trek style, but it does have some great Cisco moments where Cisco ain't having shit with Vin, because he's like,
Yeah.
man, I'm trying to calm motherfuckers down. You're gonna get us all killed. Settle your ass down. He talks his ass down. I love it. Whenever Cisco
Yeah.
shouts at people, it brings it elevates the episode um, a lot. And the rest of it is your old fashioned Trek. Figure out a solution through some weird technical. What is it? I think Miles and Kira keep transporting.
Yeah,
The
they no, they just go literally looking through time for them. They wind up in like Prohibition era America. They wind up in all kinds of weird places,
no,
and
the,
they
the
just.
cute the cute one. The cute one was when they transported to the hippies, and they
Mhm.
weren't able to transport away in time. So the hippies saw them transport, and they're like, "Yo, that was some good, some good
Yeah,
shit."
but they just completely write it off, right? It's like, wow, man, the wild.
That was trippy. Like, where'd you get these drugs? Where'd you get these drugs?
Yeah.
Um, Let me see. Directed by Frakes, by the way, part two. So Frakes was hanging around. He was like, man, I got a couple weeks off. Let me play around with the sister show here. But I feel you when you talked about what's his name, Roddenberry. And people always like to bring up Roddenberry's vision. But Roddenberry had some weird ideas for Trek too. His vision wasn't always, peace and love. He was more interested in Deanna Troi having four breasts until they realized for budgeting reasons, I don't think it's going to work. You know, uh, Roddenberry is responsible for creating the planet of Risa, which is pretty much a sex planet.
Yes. Yeah, it's
So
like a planetary whorehouse, basically, that
yes,
everybody goes to. And like, okay, you've been on Rise, motherfucker. Just
I
doing
know.
drugs,
So
banging
so
whores.
Roddenberry's vision is, I take it with a grain of salt, but I get what people say. Star Trek for the most part is supposed to be this positive vision, but DS9 decided to play in a different sandbox. They're like, we can still uphold the values of the Federation, working together, unity, and everything. And for me, it makes Roddenberry's vision even more powerful when you're in a situation where it's very bleak. And that's what I liked about Discovery seasons 3 and 4, is that everything's gone. Everything's we're at a moment where we could just go rogue. Why not? Who gives a shit? But no, we still have these ideals that we want to live by. We want to treat people with respect. We want to think of a better future. So that darkness there for me only shines a brighter light on what Roddenberry's vision is, because it's easy to have Roddenberry's vision when you're on the Enterprise D, which is like a galaxy class. It's like being on the fucking on some cruise ship to the Bahamas, and you just every once in a while you run into some sharks or something
Yeah.
some big whale that wants to or some German U-boats. And okay, and then you get rid of the German U-boats, and then you go back on your damn cruise to the Bahamas. You got carpeted hallways on the Enterprise D. That's an easy place to have Roddenberry's vision, but can you still have it on the last outpost, out in the edge of space with all this stuff happening. So I think that's the beauty of DS9, that
Yeah,
it doesn't
but
take.
it's not about the Trek lore so much as it is about how like how would Roddenberry, for example, have seen the 2020s from a 1960s point of view? I think he was more optimistic than that. And okay, we were living in the 1990s, looking ahead 30 years to the 2020s. Like, I don't know, did we really think that things would get that bad? And
I think
how would
so, though. I think so because all this stuff with World War III and all the eugenics, that was Roddenberry's time. It's not like they
right,
created that for Star Trek. There's a definite, what do you call it, in canon uh, storyline where yes, Earth gets really fucking bad before it gets good.
right,
So, which I think is Roddenberry's warning to mankind is that look, because Roddenberry, his heyday obviously was in the middle of the Cold War, all this stuff happening. He was a military officer too, so I think he saw the dangers of where humanity could go. So I think he purposely made it so that yeah, Earth got dark because you guys, if you don't fucking make peace with each other, like in the real world, our world, yeah, you're gonna get fucked, and you're not gonna have Vulcans to like come in
yeah.
and rescue you. So I don't know. I think for me, yes, that's part of Roddenberry's lore in Star Trek. This stuff is not new. It's not something that they wrote for Deep Space Nine. That's been part of Star Trek lore since whenever.
Oh,
Khan was the original
yeah,
series.
yeah. No, it's true. It's just I think from a 1990s perspective, like the internet was coming out. We were making like a lot of major like technology was jumping at the fastest rate it had since the Industrial Revolution.
But you know what
Things
you
were
got.
getting
But
better for like all kinds of marginalized people. Like, I don't know how you could have been that negative about 30 years
because
in the
but it,
future in the 90s.
I think they were playing off of what's going on at the time, though. Because remember, 93, 94, LA riots, Rodney
Right.
King. So that stuff was happening in the 90s. I mean, not, so I think they were playing off of, look, because in the same sense, in this vision of 2024, you have exactly what you said. You had the technology, you had the rich moguls, you had the media, you had that. But I think what they're trying to show, and it's something that's very true still in America, definitely here in Brazil, is like, yeah, then there's those folks over there that we don't talk about.
Right.
You can take, bring somebody to Sao Paulo where we live, and we can take them to Paulista and to Morumbi and all these rich, beautiful neighborhoods. Oh yeah, and there's those Cracolândia guys, the crackheads over there, but we don't talk about them.
Right.
So, or the favelas that we always say, it's different than Rio de Janeiro where they're next to each other, the rich and the poor. But in Sao Paulo, you can live here almost your whole life and never see a favela because it's those
Well,
folks
you can
there.
see them, but you won't necessarily have to walk
Yes,
through
you know
them.
what I mean. It's like you don't have to
Right.
interact with, you know. But in a way, Pete, because there's folks that live on the other side of the river and they really don't. Like if you live in Bella Vista and Paulista, and that's where your life is, and you never cross the river over to this side where it's more suburbs, yeah, you may never encounter somebody from favela and stuff like that, or well, you'll encounter them because they're cleaning your house, but you don't have to go into one.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the so I think that's the message, which is a little heavy-handed. That's one criticism I have with this episode, is that it doesn't try to no subtext here. It's very heavy-handed. That look, we have tent cities in Los Angeles right now. We have people living in tents. What's up with that? This is supposed to be a rich state of California, and that's got Silicon Valley. It's got Hollywood. It's got all the money. Why the fuck do we have tent cities? You know,
Mm-hmm.
do we have whole areas of Los Angeles that are blighted, and with immigrants that can't get work or whatever? That's the message, and it's real. I mean, it exists. I don't think it's to the level maybe of what they depicted on the show, but it's sci-fi. They got to pump it up a
Yeah.
little, pump it up to 11 as a Spinal Tap
Mm-hmm.
reference. You know, they got to, but it's the message isn't that out there. I think Picard, but Picard was a few years before. Picard was like doing this, but like the light version before it got to like that intense. But anyway, let's move ahead. So we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We still got, I think, two more episodes to get to.
I think just
No,
the
just one
one, I
more.
think.
Just one more because we there. So the last episode for tonight, folks, and I'll share this in the groups throughout the week. Is sorry, life support. Oh, and finally, my favorite character gets written off the show. Um, January 30th, 1995, teleplay by Ronald D. Moore, story by Christian Ford and Roger Sofer, directed by Reza Badi. Again, I don't know who this Reza person is, but been directing a bunch of episodes here. Bashir, great line here. If I remove his brain and replace it with a machine, he might look like Burrell. He might even talk like Burrell, but he won't be Burrell. The spark of life would be gone. He'd be dead, and I will have killed him. So, go ahead, Peter. Life support.
Yeah, to be honest, the best thing about, well, I mean, I agree with you. Burrell's not a great character, so I mean, bye bye. But yeah, the best things about this episode were Jake and Nog again. there,
Just trying to get
yeah,
girls.
there is a whole story here where Burrell gets written off the show, and they kind of try and make you care, but since nobody liked the character anyway, you don't. But basically, like he dies at the beginning. He's he just has an accident. Actually, I don't even think people try and kill him. He just like
No,
has an
yeah,
accident.
yeah. Uh, it says here when Burrell and Kai Wynn make an unannounced shuttle trip to DS9 to finalize peace treaty with the Cardassians, an accident seriously injures Burrell, who dies on the operating table.
Yes,
So,
but then it turns out he's not dead. Bashir figures out he's alive, and he regenerates his brain.
yes,
Um,
there's
but
residual
by
radiation,
yes, it's
whatever
the
that is.
radiation from the accident. So he uses the radiation. This is like some real pseudoscience bullshit, but he uses like the residual radiation from the accident to regenerate his brain, but the radiation is killing his body. So it turns out, okay, he was dead. Now he's not dead. He's got to live long enough to go through these peace negotiations, but he's either going to have to choose between being a vegetable or dying for real. And yeah, he chooses to die for real. But in the
No,
background,
guide Wynn.
sorry,
Burrell chooses to guide Wynn because Wynn is totally lost. Vedic Wynn. Or
yes,
Kai Wynn.
yeah,
She's Kai now, yeah.
yeah.
She's totally lost without him.
Yes, but in the background, you got this story about kind of the distancing that goes through teenage boys and their friendships when they start to get interested in girls. You got Jake, who's like dating a fucking Dabo girl, and Nog, who's feeling kind of left behind. And he's like, "Oh, we were supposed to play games tonight." He's like, "Yeah, I got a date, man." And Nog's like, "Oh, great! Tell her to find a date for me." And Jake, being a stand-up guy, finds her one. And Nog is just like such an embarrassment, man. It's like,
Yes.
you have to chew your food for me.
Yes. Are you not gonna
Yeah,
chew food for me?
yeah,
Why are you
yeah.
talking so much to your woman?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So I mean, Nog was the MVP of this episode. It's like Burrell, okay, yeah, R.I.P. I guess, but no, definitely loved Nog, learning a thing or two about women, and Jake learning a thing or two about friendship. Their story was like way better than the main story in this episode.
No, I agree with you. I like, and one thing I like about their little story too is the point that they make, which is an important point. Because nowadays everybody's so sensitive to like, you have to accept everything. You have to, no, you don't. You know, because they come to this
Yeah.
conclusion. Like Odo actually locks them both up so that they can talk to each other. So they come to the conclusion that some cultural differences are just too much to handle. I can still love your ass, but I'm not eating a fucking dog. You know, if you
Hmm.
come from China or whatever and you eat dogs. It's like, okay, go ahead and eat your dogs. Just don't invite me to dinner on that night, you know? And I'll still love your ass. It's just, some differences are way too much to handle. So that's a great message. Um, and although there is a little bit of intrigue, not much in this episode, and a little bit of it is Kai Wynn, who's such
Yes.
a sinister little bitch that we all love. And really, and I love how Bashir maturing as a character more and more as these seasons grow, and he calls her out and he calls her a coward, which I love this episode. And he says, "You're a coward because you don't want to do the negotiations alone because you need someone to blame in case they go wrong."
Hmm.
She's just using. First, he calls her out because she just wants to keep him alive, and he's like, "You don't care about this man's pain, do you?" And then later in her quarters or wherever they are, he's like, "You're a fucking coward. You always you're scheming." At the end of it all, this guy's dying, and he's doing everything possible to remain somewhat alive to do these negotiations. And the only reason you really want him alive is not because you care about him, is because if they go wrong, you say, "Oh yeah, but he had half a brain." And one of my notes, by the way, Pete, you'll like this: Burrell with half a brain is not much more or less charismatic. He's just whatever.
Yeah.
He's kind of on that baseline. Um, it does have an important plot point though that plays a big role in a couple episodes moving forward is that the peace negotiations do go through between
Yes.
Cardassia and Bajor, and that does become a little bit important moving forward. But we do get a Kai Wynn now that doesn't have Burrell there as kind of her shoulder voice, kind of like this moderate voice. So we also
Yeah.
get to see a Kai Wynn that just goes absolutely insane in some in episodes coming up. So there's some good stuff as far as that. It's just the story was just not, I just didn't care. In my last note here, I said, well, at least the fantasy episode was not his last hurrah. You know, he did actually do something that's important for the history of Bajor and the story arc, the long story arc of the show. But yeah, not my favorite episode. I didn't hate it, mainly because the Nog and Jake stuff was cute, and Bashir just growing a set of balls and telling Kai Wynn, that she's just a cowardly bitch. She needs to hear that.
Yeah, but she does actually like. I wouldn't say she turns a corner because this is actually it turns out to be a big loss for her in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
But she does at least finally appreciate like the value that this guy had to her. She's like, I can't do it on my own. Like
Mm-hmm.
I really need this guy to the point where I'm willing to make him suffer to stay alive.
I
Just for me,
know.
just for me. But I need this guy.
Exactly. Well, that's the mastery of DS9 when the writing is great and when they have great characters who, even in a bad episode or not, just a decent episode, the character will still do something that you're like, there's so many layers to this. And it's morally ambiguous because you do get Kai Wynn, like you said, did she turn a corner? No, she's still a conniving bitch, but in a way that you're like, yeah, I guess I kind of see what where she's coming from, because she realizes at some point I am a conniving bitch who really just wants power, but I don't know what to do with this power, and I need this guy to one make it look like I'm a little bit more moderate, so I don't scare people
Yeah.
too much, but two, because he actually knows how to do this a little bit better. I'll never admit it. So, but it's all ego. It's all
And he gives her legitimacy too.
gives her legitimacy, of course, and it's no different than Ducat. Ducat is a very similar character. I love that he's the bad guy of the show. If we want to just break it down, but is he? He's just a guy trying to figure his life out. He grew up in this crazy, fucked up planet, and he's fucked up. He's got ego, mental problems. So you hate him, but at the same time you feel sorry for him. You know, maybe to a little greater extent than Kai Wen, because Kai Wen you just end up hating when she comes on
Hmm.
with my child. You just I just want to smack the shit out of this woman.
Yeah,
Which
Ducat's not a hypocrite. He's pretty open about being a bastard.
yes, 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 um, and of course all credit to the acting there. What's her name?
Mark Robs. Oh, Louise Fletcher. Yeah.
Yeah, Louise Fletcher. All credit to her for creating one of the most wonderful villains that you just love to hate. Um, but anyway, that's it for tonight, folks. Okay, and hopefully you guys will hear this episode throughout the week because I'll share it through the groups. I just had no time to do it tonight. But we are back, and hopefully we'll be able to keep it up on Tuesdays. I think Tuesday is going to be the best day for now. If not, emergency day will be Thursdays. So skip and watch. We can't forget to do that. Civil defense, where the ship goes haywire.
Yeah, it's
Or the
actually
ship.
my one of my favorites of this like second quarter of the season. That's definitely my favorite.
Oh wow. Uh, I'd skip it. There's like a million Star Trek episodes that have computer anomalies and blah 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 and have done it better. What about Meridian? Dax falls in love with the phase dude.
Brigadoon,
Yeah,
can't
Brigadoon in
we
space.
two go walking through the heather? Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, they might as well have just thrown some songs in there, actually.
The planet phases out between dimensions every 60 years. She was willing to be away for 60 fucking years. Oh my god.
Yes, but
Anyway.
she'd be existing as pure consciousness. Which actually,
Yeah.
come to think of it, I question the logic of this episode, how it would work with Jadzia and the symbiont. And I don't know, maybe actually I might have to give it at least 1 point for maybe that's why it wouldn't take her. Maybe.
Oh, because of the symbiont. I don't
Yeah.
know. Could be. And next episode here we talked about tonight is Meridian. Oh no, I'm sorry. Defiant. Commander William Riker, not really, shows up unannounced. Okay, and Kira shows him the Defiant, and he steals the shit.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I could skip this, but I think it's largely because I don't remember Thomas Riker from Next Generation at all. Maybe if I had more connection there, I would have appreciated it more. But I did really like the second half. The interactions with Ducat and Cisco and the Cardassians, like there's seeds planted there, but if you miss it, you'll I'm pretty sure you'll still be able to pick up on things.
I feel you. I feel you. For me, this is a watch, especially if you're a Trekkie. So maybe that's the thing here that Pete kind of mentioned. He wasn't familiar with this, but if you're a TNG fan and you know the whole Thomas Riker thing, this is like a big deal, big crossover. One of the main characters from TNG on DS9. Um, so definitely watch for me. And as Pete said, also, I think the second half is really incredible. That's where you know the whole watch comes at. Fascination. This is Avery Brooks directing the weird Luxwana Troy on menopause episode.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm torn on this one actually. Like objectively, it's a terrible episode, but it's almost so bad. It's almost worth seeing. I'm still gonna say skip. I'm still gonna say skip. But if you want to see one of the more bizarre DS9 episodes you'll ever see, you might want to check this out. I personally could have lived without it.
Yeah, this is the run along home of this season. And then we got Past Tense Part 1 and 2. And
Yeah,
go back in time.
yeah, wasn't a fan. Wasn't a fan. And I I will say one thing. It actually does get referenced later in the show. Like, hey, wait a minute.
Yes,
This guy looks exactly like Cisco.
I know.
So, but it's not a really important plot point. It's just like kind of thrown in there as like kind of a meta joke or something.
Yes, yes.
So, I think unless now I'm trying to think of like an audience who is like millennial audiences who would really enjoy this episode. And I don't think there are many. I think it's like more people who grew up in the late 20th century who might actually pick up on this. But yeah, for millennials, I don't think there's a lot there.
I don't know, Pete. I disagree because millenniums are all tuned into the whole social injustice and this, that, and the
Yeah,
third.
but they didn't actually experience that period in
Oh,
history.
yeah, they didn't experience it, but just the message of, the haves and have nots and the evil capitalists and this and that and the third. Like, this is heavy handed as fuck. I think it's like right
Yeah,
in the
guess that's
millennium.
another reason why I'm not really a big fan.
Yeah, this is a millennial well hustle. No, and I think I downgraded it a little bit more on the second watching and the first watching because of that. I had forgotten how heavy handed it is. Like there's even that
Hmm.
line with Bashir. It's like, what's it say? Like, I can't believe this is. Why would people treat each other like this? This is horrible. Like the whole time he's like he's being what the audience is supposed to be, which is the audience supposed to
Right.
make their opinion on what they're seeing. And Bashir's like telling the audience, look, this is
Yeah.
horrible. Look, this is injustice. Look. And I'm like, oh, I had forgotten all this shit was in this episode. So I feel you. I still like it. And it's still kind of like, so, an important episode as far as Star Trek lore. It gets referenced a lot. The
Yeah.
Bell riots and everything.
Yeah. No, it's rated. I think on a lot of blog sites is like one of the 20 best episodes in the
Oh, for
series.
sure.
But
Yeah, no, it
yeah,
always ranks pretty
not for
high.
me.
Okay, so it's a skip for Pete, but I'd say watch it. Just, make up your mind there. And last episode tonight we did was Life Support, where Burrell dies, but he
Hmm.
dies of long agonizing death at the
Yeah.
hand of Bashir at the insistence of Kai Wynn.
Yeah. I this is another tough one because it's another episode I didn't particularly like, but it's kind of essential to the overall plot of the story. Like,
I
if you want to
know, I hated it.
follow, yeah, if you want to follow what's going on, you have to watch it. So I'm going to say
I
it's
know.
not good, but watch it.
Yeah, but look, in its defense, it's not terrible. You get a few good
No,
dramatic
no,
scenes with Kai Wynn because she's just Louis Fletcher's just a great actress. So you get some good Kai Wynn scenes. You get Bashir growing some balls, which is great because his character really matures. You get some funny stuff with what's his name, Jake
no.
and Nod. So, like 60% of the episode is pretty good stuff. And then you just got to deal with the 40% where, Burrell is just lying on the bed being a bore,
Yeah, I know,
and
and it's funny too because like Kira and Burrell are supposed to be like this like great pair of lovers, this power couple. She gets over it really quick. Like, I don't think he ever
I
gets mentioned
know.
again.
I'm glad you picked up on that because I did watch, it's not that far from this episode where you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? Yeah, she does get over that real fast. But anyway, all right, folks, that's it. Love talking Star Trek. Maybe one of these days I'll give you my thoughts on the last episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds because that's right when I started getting kind of sick. July, I was just kind of not feeling it. And I did all the episodes for Star Trek Strange New Worlds except for the last one. I just, it's like this hanging episode. So maybe I'll make a little quick video on that. We'll be back with the Brazil Expat Journal in the near future. I got some guests that I'm kind of talking up to come on. And, so if you want to find out about what Pete and I do down here in this crazy country called Brazil, where they need a couple bell riots to go down. Or maybe we have them like every other month. I don't know. Brazil's a wild country. And that's what's happening. See you guys. Till next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, which I should have said at the beginning, but whatever. Till next time.
All right.